Kylian Mbappé, Saudi Arabia. I was reading the math about this, right? So the weekly salary, if he does go to Al-Hilal, who have made a world record $300 million bid, £260 million, would be £11.63 million a week that Mbappe would earn, which is precisely £9.6 million more than he earns at PSG at the moment. Every week.
He's only on $2 million a week at the moment. The per lad.
Yeah. So, and with all the creative freedom that you'd want. So if he does this for a year and then he gets his dream move to Real Madrid, happy days Kylian, isn't it? But sad days for football.
They're giving him 500 million, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
For the year.
Seems like a lot.
It does seem like quite a bit.
But it's nothing to them.
Well, you could buy a Premier League team for less than that. So
I don't think they want to, though. I think they want to do their thing over there. They want to bring everyone over there.
I understand that. I do. I know what they're doing, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like they're getting good value. You know, that this will be the moment where they catapult into everybody's living rooms. Will it really? Are we all going to sit and watch Saudi Arabian football on TV?
The lads at, well, that's the
maybe we are. Maybe the two big leagues in the world in 10 years' time are going to be America and Saudi Arabia, and you know they've long been allies, haven't they?
They have. Like the lads had a similar conversation recently on the show. Like it's almost like an episode of Black Mirror. But at what point will we be watching Match of the Day Saudi Arabia, like, and watching highlights and kids going around in Al-Hilal shirts?
You can watch the local football in your neighbourhood if you choose to. If you get sucked into watching, if Black Mirror style, if you don't have the brain power to not do it, then fair play, congratulations on being on a
But if they sign enough of these unbelievable players, then the Western world and kids are going to want to watch them.
Who cares? The MLS signed a lot of washed up has-beens, right? And okay, so this is not washed up has-beens.
No, it's not.
This is some of the best players in the world, but they're playing a low standard of football. Like, do you watch pre-season friendlies that don't involve your team ever?
No.
Why would you?
Yeah, but
China tried.
Kylian Mbappé in his prime doesn't take part in. Like,
but hold on a second.
Are you telling me you care about the outcome of one team versus another in Saudi Arabia? You've literally no connection with it.
No, but it's more the players, isn't it? I couldn't care less about the team, and I'm not saying I'd watch them, but I'm saying I think a large cohort of people will. Like if Kylian Mbappé, Jordan Henderson, all these lads are heading off.
Okay, who?
Not to put Henderson in the same.
Yeah, well, you're gonna come on. No, you don't have to watch it. They could sign the 25 best players in the world, but I'll still be far more interested because I follow Aston Villa in Aston Villa's fortunes, and that is also in itself ridiculous. I'll still be trying to get more interested in my domestic league and more likely to bring my kids to my domestic league than it's up to us to. We have incredible power when it comes to what's going on here by not watching and not caring about it. Kylian Mbappé could go and score 600 goals. They could be the greatest goals you've ever seen. Remember the goals Zlatan scored where he dribbles around like 12 people in a pre-season friendly?
It was Ajax
in a pre-season friendly.
Or Friday Galaxy.
Yeah. No, it was Ajax. It was back in the
back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's meaningless.
But what about the young people who don't support clubs and they support players? They'll go wherever Mbappe goes. You know, you're saying Aston Villa, but that's your thing, you know, and you come from a time where you'd support the club over the player, but oftentimes now it's like the player's marketed so much that they're the new club for people. So like if they sign enough with those type of players of the types of Mbappe and get them in longer term contracts, why wouldn't the new generation of football fans watch their football in Saudi Arabia? Why would they care about the political aspect of it or the morality aspect?
Well, then they're not good people. If you don't care about, if you don't care about morality, if you're making a choice to go, I don't really care about this thing, like fast fashion.
Kids don't care about Saudi human rights issues.
Well, their heroes are going to play for these leagues. So they're going to follow their heroes.
There are repercussions for that.
I think if there's enough that go, the people will follow. If the product is better, eventually.
Who will follow though? Enough to a point where
enough people will watch it. All they want is people watching it.
But hang on, that's a different. You're saying we're all going to be watching. Shane's question was, when will we be watching? That was his question, and I'm saying I'm never going to be watching it.
That's you.
But
or rather, when
that was what he asked.
When will the TV?
That's what he asked.
When will the TV companies be showing us highlights? regardless of our individual decisions to watch, when will we be thrown this?
Well, you can get it now if you want. What TV companies are you talking about? When will Sky show it?
Well,
when will they prioritise that over the Premier League?
Yeah,
they're never going to prioritise it over the Premier League, because the Premier League has a domestic market of 60 million people, and so sure, the rights for the Premier League are 6 billion. Richard Masters in the papers today, and it's slightly greater international rights than local rights, but the still local rights will be 2 billion. And for 2 billion, you'll still get a really good league, a really competitive league, where the storied history of Manchester United and Liverpool and Arsenal and Chelsea and everybody else actually matters. That's why this stuff matters. You can't just... So the reason that the Saudis and Qatar and the UAE are trying to buy football is because it has a history that they don't have. That's the cachet that they're trying to get. It's not just about the geopolitical power, while that's very important. It's also about the kudos from owning something that has a history and a tradition. And the Saudi League will never have that. So no matter how good the quality of football gets, it's going to be like one of those Champions League games that you watch where it's like, oh, the quality of football is very good here, but I actually don't care about what happens here. And so, sure, there will be a critical mass of people around the world who are watching this, but it won't matter.
But Abu Dhabi bought Manchester City in 2008, and it's basically a new club now. It's nothing to do with the previous club. And they have a whole new generation of fans. There's Man City fans walking around the street now that would never have supported City if Abu Dhabi didn't buy them.
Are they Abu Dhabi fans?
They're fans of what they're seeing in front of them. They're fans of Haaland and De Bruyne. They don't care about where the money's coming from. That's my point. If the players go, people will follow. But people just want to watch a good product. People want escapism. They're not going to look into what's happening here.
Your point is that
their senses will be dulled.
In Manchester, a club exists that has a lot of money that has come from the Gulf, right?
Yeah.
But you could build that same team in Saudi Arabia, and you're not going to have kids in Manchester wandering around in shirts for one of those teams.
Well, Manchester, no, because City are doing that in England.
Yeah, so...
But another city
Shane's questions, which was the basis of this, is when are we going to be watching this? When is it going to be on our TVs? And my point is that it's never going to supplant the Premier League in the hearts and minds of the people who are Premier League fans, genuine Premier League fans, as opposed to the casual fans who you're talking about, who are like Instagram fans. And like, I don't really actually know. I mean, they're you could basically just buy the Kardashian brand and access a similar sized audience, and that's the conversation. I think you're like, oh, this doesn't matter because the audience is going to be so big.
That wouldn't achieve sports washing though. Like, and this is Field of Dream stuff. Build it and they will come. And I feel like a lot of people are gonna head towards the Saudi League because it is not like the MLS whatsoever. It's players in the prime of their life, and kids, the generation of kids nowadays, as you say, Colm, only care about players. They do not care about teams. They're Mbappé fans and they're Haaland fans. Some of them support teams, of course.
Yeah, I mean, come on, but kids. You're saying kids like you know every single kid, right?
No,
like the individual players have become big brands. That's true. But at some point, everybody starts to think about stuff like, oh, they will never think about it. You can never reach a moment where you tip over from they just executed another 200 people there. Oh, but the football. No, but the 200 people.
No, but you see, you and me would have the same preference. I'd never leave the Premier League for Saudi League.
Nor would I. Sorry, for the record.
But I'm not talking about us. That's my point here. There is a market for this if prime players go over.
Sure, but
that's the thing. I'm not going to say it's going to overtake the Premier League completely, but in 5 to 10 years' time, you could see kids walking around with Saudi Arabian club jerseys.
I'd be so unsurprised. I'd be so unsurprised if that was
how many of them though, right? Because there's always going to be there's always going to be one or two. Right?
Yeah, totally. Because we thought that was going to happen in China and it didn't, and MLS as well, and it hasn't really. It hasn't taken over the Premier League. This is probably the biggest threat to it.
There's obviously way more money here than there is in either of those two leagues. Like in raw terms, the money that's being talked about by Mbappé, I just don't think they're getting good value for money. I think that Mbappé could go and everybody like, oh, this is well, we'll see.
Well, the one thing, because it's only a 1-year contract, so he's going to leave after 12 months. So how much positive impact will that have for the league? I don't know. The other thing with Mbappé, sorry Shane, the other thing with Mbappé is that like he doesn't get challenged as it is enough with Paris Saint-Germain. He doesn't play in enough high quality games, Mbappé. The world doesn't really see him. Like so many of those games in France, he's breezing through them. Even when they lose, whatever, like even if they win the league, it's like grand, other than the PSG Ultras or whatever. They haven't done anything in the Champions League. We don't see him that often. We don't see the best of Mbappé.
Let's go to Australia. Kathleen McNamee, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, guys. Doing good.
How's the World Cup?
Yeah, it's gone well. Sitting in Perth, a very, very rainy and cold Perth. Arrived in late last night. So just spent the morning kind of wandering around, exploring. Was just watching the Canada press conference there. So their coach, Bev Priestman, was saying that Ireland are a horrible team to play against, and that Jessie Fleming will be fit. So that's probably the big news that's just happened in the last 10 or so minutes from over here.
There's another Ireland press conference today at around about 9:30, but Vera is in all the papers this morning, so obviously there was something yesterday as well.
That's actually from the weekend. So Vera was chatting to the newspapers, and she was saying that Abby Larkin she didn't say specifically that she's going to start, but that she kind of hinted that it could be a possibility, and if that is the case, the likelihood is that Marissa Shiva may come out of the squad, which would be tough one for her to take, considering the performance the other night and being substituted so quickly after the penalty. But the big question mark is Abby. She was absolutely brilliant when she came on. Is she ready to have that starting position and to play as well as she did from the get-go? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Vera says. She's, as you say, she's up for media around 9:30 your time. The last time we did one of these are like the FIFA press conferences, and normally a lot of the time the Irish media gets to chat to Vera kind of, through
separately.
The Irish. Yeah, so it's a lot easier. The last one only lasted for 11 minutes. So yeah, the big ones will be chances of Abby Larkin starting, an update on Louise Quinn. She flew to Perth in a protective boot, but did play in the training session they have. They have another training session later today. And then also, how is Katie McCabe's hand? Because her fingers were fairly heavily bandaged after the last game. It's not Katie up for media today, it's Kira Carusa. So be interesting to see. That kind of implies that there won't be any changes up front for Ireland in terms of who's going to start in that solo position.
So the team, Kathleen, went back to the base in Brisbane after the Australia game, and then 5 hours west to Perth.
5 hours.
Turns out Australia's pretty big.
Yeah, it turns out it is. I had the good fortune of having a screaming baby behind me for the 5 hours yesterday, which was very fun. Although I felt a lot worse for the parents than I did myself. But 5 hours, it's a long trip. There was a lot of people kind of questioning why the team didn't maybe stay on in Sydney for a day or two and then go straight to Perth and kind of because there's also a jet lag, so like there's a 2 hour time difference. So in Brisbane and Sydney we were 9 hours ahead of Ireland. Here we're only 7, but it was FIFA mandated that they go back to Brisbane because that is technically their base. So the team had a bit of media on Saturday morning, and then they had a day off. I had training session on Friday, bit of media on Saturday morning, the rest of the day off on Saturday, which was quite funny because I think a lot of people took that as an opportunity to recharge their battery. So, I was wandering around South Brisbane going into the fan zones, and you just kept running into the players. And it got to the point where I felt like saying to them, I swear I'm not trying to stalk you. This part is just very, very small and it's kind of the nice part of Brisbane. So yeah, a lot of them went to the fan zone in Brisbane, which was really, really good vibe, and watched the England game there. And then they flew out on Sunday morning, and they've had a training session here since. And then, another one today. And also a familiarization with the stadium later, just where the team get to kind of walk out and around the field, and then game day tomorrow.
Should be a lot more Irish fans. What is it, 20,500 capacity? Perth, a rectangular stadium, so the shape of the stadium will surprise no one.
Yeah. I don't know if there will be more Irish here. Perth, because it's so off the beaten track, it's kind of harder to get to for a lot of Irish fans. I went to a couple of Irish pubs this morning, because what else do you do at 11 o'clock on what day is it, Tuesday? And I was chatting to just some of the owners there and stuff, and they say there's a nice Irish crowd in Perth, but they don't really expect too many people to be flying in. I've heard of a couple of groups, but a lot of people are staying over on the other coast just because of that 5 hour flight there and 5 hours back. It's not particularly pleasant. And also just it's not as regular as some of the other internal flights, but there should be a good Irish crowd. There's a couple of the pubs here that are throwing events, so we'll bop along to those and see who has come out for the big game.
Is it getting much coverage in the local papers? I'm just keeping an eye on the score here from the New Zealand-Philippines game, and Philippines on course for a massive shock, 1-0 lead there after just over an hour. But I'd imagine that the papers in both countries, Australia and New Zealand, are fairly heavily weighted towards this.
Yeah, I was actually just watching that game before I came on with you guys, and if New Zealand had won, that would have been them true. So that would have been massive, considering like the last game was the first one they've ever won at a World Cup. The papers are definitely going heavy on it. It's just actually getting to watch the games that's really difficult, because apart from the Matildas games, all the group stage games are all behind a paywall. So like you can get Opta Sports, which is basically the equivalent of Sky Sports here, which a lot of homes will have anyways. But even if you go into like most hotel rooms, like a lot of the Irish Press Pack hasn't been watching the games. I bought a subscription because it was like $20 for the month that I was here, and I was like, it's going to be worth it in terms of actually seeing what's happening in the World Cup. But a lot of places you go into either don't have a subscription or just aren't showing it. So there's definitely, in the traditional media, there's a lot of buzz, but it's kind of hard unless you're going to very specific places to catch the games, which is a shame, because I think that's the way that you get people the most, is, you know, those people casually flicking around on their TV and see a game pops up and decide to pay attention to it. And there's a lot of anger on the ground here from Australians that if Optus was allowed by the rights to it, I think it was a good few years ago now, because they see it as a barrier to growing the game here. I mean, if you look at the viewing figures from most other countries, I think Brazil's last game was watched by like 11.5 million people, which is the biggest viewership they've had since the Beijing Olympics or something on women's football. So like stuff like that's great to see, and it's definitely happening. I think there's 54% more attendance so far at this stage of the tournament. So all those figures across the board are really positive. It's just annoying if you're in Australia to try and watch it.
Ireland are playing the reigning Olympic champions here, Canada, but Canada have only won one of their last 7 games. They haven't scored in 4 of their last 6 matches. They've conceded 10 in their last 8. So you're saying we have a chance?
Possibly. I thought another interesting fact about Canada, of the 32 teams that are in the World Cup, 30 of them have domestic leagues. Canada are one of the ones that do not have a domestic league. They have the 8th highest income in the world, and the other team who doesn't have a league is Haiti, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. So it says a lot about the setup for them there. If you watched the game they played against Nigeria, I think it summed it up very well to say they're really good defenders, but you don't know where their goal is going to come from, which makes me think that tomorrow could be a little bit of a trudge, because that's kind of how people look at us. Now, Jessie Fleming going into the setup does change things massively, because she's a really high impact player. There was massive worry on the Canadian side that she wasn't going to be available. Likelihood, from what I've seen in the Canadian papers and stuff, is that they think Christine Sinclair is going to be taken out, who missed that penalty.
That's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but also you have to remember what Christine Sinclair is like 40 odd, so like you probably don't expect her to play a full match anyways, whereas Jessie Fleming is competing at the highest level with Chelsea in the WSL. So that's going to be really interesting. And then, I mean, I half expected I was like 50-50 on whether there'd be any changes, and I thought the only change on the Irish side would probably be Abby Larkin or Lucy Quinn coming in to that kind of midfield role, and also providing a little bit of cover for Katie. So really interested to see what Vera says about that in a couple of hours' time. What kind of shape do Canada have? How do they match up against our shape? Actually very similar. That's the thing. The two teams set up pretty much the same way, or at least have in their last couple of games. They like to go heavy on the defence, and then like Fleming is really good at breaking behind the lines, so utilising her in the best way possible would be really important. They also have Ashley Lawrence, who is like one of the best players out there at the moment, and she is just signed for Chelsea, so we'll be seeing a lot more of her this season in the WSL. She was up for media today as well, and again I feel like herself and Bev Priestman were kind of egging Ireland on and putting us up a little bit. But yeah, tomorrow's crucial. I mean, we lose tomorrow, we're out of the tournament, so a result of some kind is absolutely essential. I think I probably felt a lot more optimistic coming out of the Australia game than I do now, having had like a couple of days. I really don't know where our goals are going to come from, unless it is a set piece or something, especially if Vera was like so reticent to use Amber Barrett on the night in Sydney. So yeah, the team is going to be interesting tomorrow, especially I feel like after the first hour, if it looks like we're not going to score a goal, I just wonder, will Vera have the confidence to stick on someone like Amber?
Perth, what's it like?
It's a strange city. I've only had a proper chance to look around it this morning because I got in late last night. It's kind of hard to work out what its vibe is. You know, Sydney was very, hopping, happening, central city. Brisbane's very chill, whereas here you definitely notice it's a little bit more rough around the edges than the other cities that I've been to so far. It's also been the worst weather since I've been here, so that could be adding to it a little bit. But you kind of go very quickly to slightly run down areas into like big bustling districts. So yeah, I'm curious to have a proper look around maybe a little bit today and then tomorrow morning as well to see if I can find some of the nice places. Yeah, good Irish pub called Dirty Nelly's who are showing all the World Cup games, so that has been my main recommendation so far. It's also a great name for a pub.
Not bad. Can we expect Vera Powell will play Katie McCabe higher up the pitch? That seemed to be something coming out of the papers as well this morning, that she maybe feels a little less reluctant to do that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually heard Vera so like open about the fact that Katie needs to get higher up the pitch. Normally she's like, no, she wants to sit deep. But you can see her doing that, like the places that Shiva was getting herself into on the pitch. It was obvious that was something that they talked about. I think because she was talking about it so much, I really do wonder if there is going to be a tactical switch to allow that for Katie, because realistically, I don't know if we should be having someone who is 5'1" in our like back five, especially if that's a target area for teams to put in high balls. So yeah, Katie getting higher up the pitch seems that Vera thinks that she was the only one likely to score, which again, I have to question a little bit when you look at where a lot of our goals have come from recent times. Like we all know Katie playing higher up the pitch is a good thing, but we also need to make sure that we're not leaving ourselves open to things that like happened with the penalty, where someone who isn't used to playing in defensive positions does something silly, and that's the decider in what was an incredibly close game. I don't feel as sick about this one, which is maybe a bonus, or else it's a sign of resignation. I haven't quite decided yet.
No, it's hope. They're the same thing. Flip sides of the same coin. Good stuff, Kathleen. We'll let you go and get ready for the press conference. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.